This episode of The Harmonious Gentleman is brought to you by our friends at Blind Man Brewing, the most awarded brewery in Canada. They brew innovative, high-quality, and flavorful beer while working for sustainability through their green initiatives. Blind Man Brewing hosts all kinds of harmonious fun at their beautiful tap room in Lacombe, Alberta. Live music, cornhole leagues, wonderful tacos, or a refreshing pint with friends. There's always something fresh and tasty at Blind Man Brewing.
Well, if podcast episodes were the percentage increase of tariffs Mexico added last year to imported sugar, you'd know this has to be episode 156 of The Harmonious Gentleman. I'm Chris.
Wow.
Can you believe that Mexico, a country mostly known for tourism, is now only known for tariffs?
You think so?
But that is a huge tariff on sugar.
That is a big one.
So I don't know if they're making their own or growing their
What
own
a strange
sugar
number
cane.
to land on, hey? 156?
Yeah. Thankfully.
Is there some significance?
Not that
Like
I
to
know
why
of.
they chose that?
No, I didn't delve too deeply.
Okay.
Just was excited to
Come
see
on.
the number 156 come up when I Google search something.
Next time you should delve a little deeper so we
Okay.
have some context. 'Cause that's just left hanging there.
It is sort of.
Yeah. But this is Tyler over here.
Yeah, and Graham.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And Jonathan.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you.
Yeah. How about you tell us and our listeners where we are right now?
Yeah, so we're at the King's University in Edmonton, Alberta, and my name's Jonathan. I'm the program director of the Micah Centre here at King's, so one small part of the bigger project of what we're up to here at King's. Yeah, happy to have you guys here.
Yeah, and Jonathan actually kind of made this all possible. He was like our manager of the
bridger.
podcast.
Man on the ground.
Yeah, he connected us with some sweet people that we'll interview after this, and then this space is awesome to use. So thanks for doing that.
Yeah, no problem.
It's like our long-awaited King's series. Like we're going to have a few that
Yeah.
come out kind of back to back to back.
Yeah.
Which is really great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and there's some other folks that want to participate, so
Yeah.
do part 2.
Yeah,
it's
we'll
great.
do
Okay.
more for sure.
Our first 2 episodes ever were recorded in a sound studio.
That's right.
And now, hopefully these aren't our last 2 episodes ever.
What are you saying?
But here we are again,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
So listeners, just appreciate the sound of our voice
Mm-hmm.
on this one.
I should mess with
Nice.
it afterwards and make it sound worse.
Yeah.
Do that. Hey, we should get to our conversation. We have a lot to do today.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Are you guys fully caffeinated? Because we're doing basically 3.5 episodes in one day.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All I've intaked so far is coffee. All
Yeah.
day, so
Yeah, I was hoping Jonathan
That's
would
my
bring us
plan.
some food, but he did not. So we,
Yeah, he let us down. But
Shoot.
you have a chance to redeem yourself.
through
This episode.
recommendations.
Yeah.
Do you want to go first, Ty?
Yes, I'm going to recommend caffeinated beverages from Candid Coffee, which is a recommendation from Jonathan. So kind of, you're just carrying a lot of weight here today.
Mhm.
That's right.
You've done all the heavy lifting, but Candid, as far as I know, is owned and run by King's alumni.
Yeah, Levi and
Which is
Rachel
cool.
Wolf, yes,
Yeah. So shout out to them. Great coffee.
Mhm.
And so that's my recommendation. They have 2 locations, right?
They have 2, yeah. They have one just south of here on 75th, and they have one in Highlands, really close to some other awesome businesses, Kind Ice Cream and
Cool.
Fox
Oh,
Burger
yeah.
and stuff. So, yeah.
Do you want to go next? Do you have a recommendation?
Sure, yeah. Well, picking up on a question that Graham asked me earlier about what I've been listening to, Tim Baker, Canadian musical artist, formerly of Hey Rosetta. But I just discovered albums that have been out for a while now, but I've just been really, really loving Tim Baker. And I listened to a lot of his Christmas album, which is sort of mix of covers and also just some really great, not like faith-oriented Christmas songs, but just sort of the feel of home and winter and longing and all that kind of stuff that happens around Christmas. So really great Christmas album. And then now I'm listening to the other stuff too. It's been really good.
I feel this longing to move to the East Coast, and I think it's 95% Tim Baker music. Like, I think that's
Yeah.
He does, dude.
You
There's
know?
something about, he has this real strong sense of place, and
Yeah.
it's just it comes through in his music. Yeah.
There's a real vibe.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally.
I like that one. Christopher, do you have?
I have a recommendation. It's going to feel a little bit like a confession. It's a 1-person board game. called Gloomhaven Bugs and Buttons. It comes in this little box, and it takes about 25 minutes to play around. We've talked about Gloomhaven, I think, on the podcast.
Probably.
It's sort of a Dungeons & Dragons kind of like game. Epic storytelling, takes like 14 hours to play one round. But this is much different. But you have to play by yourself. So check it out, Gloomhaven.
And you showed me this. It's a teeny tiny little box. Like, it's kind of, you can put it in your back pocket and pull it out wherever you need.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
I should have brought it here.
You should have.
Could have played a game in between recordings.
I have a recommendation. Oh, Ty.
I just think it'd be really cool if we all had our own mini one and we sat around a table together playing our own round.
But sometimes it's hard to find people to play Gloomhaven with you. So this is like,
even people we played with didn't want to play it.
That's true. Yeah, that's true. That is the case.
My recommendation, you guys know one of my favorite foods is just good old-fashioned ramen.
Mm-hmm.
And I am recommending this place, having not been there. My family went there and brought me some back. So just full disclosure, it's called the Ramen Library in Olds.
I just
You
heard
been there?
about this. No.
In Olds.
Yeah. Wow. So if you're kicking around Central Alberta and you want some ramen, it's just a lot of options. There's a huge wall of different varieties you can choose from.
But do they actually cook it there?
You make it there. Yeah, and they kind of help you with it. They have a little process. Or you can just buy the packets and bring them home. So my son picked out for me this super hot but it was like the best ramen I've had. Like, it was amazing.
Really?
Yeah.
Are there recognizable brands?
Well, I wasn't there, so like what he brought home for me, I didn't recognize it at all.
Do they have Mr. Noodles?
I don't. That's pretty low brow.
The worst.
75 cents.
But the one he brought me, like, it had this like thick like heat paste to mix in after, and you know that kind of heat that burns your mouth and it's like just stupidly hot. It wasn't like that. Like, it was really hot but super tasty too. So anyway, I can't wait to actually go. Maybe we'll do an episode there.
Ramen Library.
We should go.
And just take home. Like,
you can sit in there too. You can go there and sit, and you can make it there too. They have the water boiling, and you can kind of
You make it yourself?
Well, I'm trying to think what you said. Yeah, like, I think they say you could make it yourself, but then Heidi was saying they kind of maybe helped her more than she thought they would, like showing her how the dispenser of the water works. Like, it's not just a kettle, like, it's a little system they've got. But I don't remember exactly how it sounded. But I think
cool for Olds. Like,
I think
that is cool.
Surprisingly that it's there. But
well, we did an episode at Olds, right? At that what was that place called again? Shoot, we should know.
It was a coffee shop, right?
It was a coffee shop, yeah. But it was
actually, it's on the same street as that. I think,
is it?
Right
Okay.
across from the college.
cool.
I'm going to throw. Is it Bluebird? Is that? I don't know.
Well, it's a free plug, but either way.
Yeah.
Could be.
Okay. Awesome. Good recommendation. That's pretty solid.
Yeah.
Ty, what do you want to do now?
Well, I'm going to leave it up to Jonathan to tell us a bit about himself after this little break.
Okay.
This segment is brought to you by Cilantro and Chive. Delicious, creative dishes, a huge variety of locally crafted drinks, and with locations in Lacombe and Red Deer, they're making two communities more awesome. Check out their mouth-watering Burger of the Month, a rotating menu item that satisfies your hunger and supports local initiatives and charities. Cilantro and Chive. Fresh, simple eats.
So, Jonathan, who are you? Where do you come from? And where are you going?
Okay. My name is Jonathan, and I am currently working as the program director of the Micah Centre. And how I ended up here is sort of so I was a King's student many years ago, kind of around the same time Tyler was. And when I was a student, I didn't really know what I wanted to study or what I wanted to do afterwards. I was just really taken with a couple of professors who I just loved what they were teaching and loved the things that they were involved in. One was John Heemstra, who was a political science professor here. He just retired a couple years ago, so I had the pleasure of working with him for a few years. And another was Roy Birkenbosch, who at the time was campus minister, and then he also taught some theology classes. So I just kind of mostly followed those guys around in terms of what they were teaching, and specifically John Heemstra, who is a political scientist and who was doing lots of stuff around public justice and the role of faith communities in creating a more just world. And so, about 2/3 way through my King's degree, I realized all those courses were not adding up to a degree. And so towards the end, I ended up with a theology degree because I realized I needed to sort of piece things together and actually get the credits required to build up towards something specific. And theology was where I was sort of most leaning at that point. So graduated with a theology degree here at King's, and but over that time had realized that working with folks on the margins and spending time with folks in marginalized communities was kind of where my heart was. So when I graduated, and while I was at King's, I actually spent a semester abroad in East Africa and Uganda. I was enrolled as a student at a university there in Mukono, just outside of Kampala, and really liked that. And so at the time, I thought when I graduated that I would do something internationally, maybe work with communities experiencing poverty somewhere outside of Canada. And so through the Micah Centre, so where I work now, I was involved as a student right when it was starting. So when I was at King's, the Micah Centre was just kind of getting off the ground at King's. And at the time, what the Micah Centre mostly did was place students in international internship opportunities. So I did an internship in Haiti. I spent about half a year living in Haiti, and learned a lot and had a really good experience, but also realized that it's like, I don't think the international context is for me. I don't, living cross-culturally and some of the things happening, just living as an expat there just wasn't for me.
Were you a student in Haiti?
I was not a student. I had just graduated. Okay. So I was doing an internship through King's, but my degree was done, and I was so I was working for a couple of nonprofits that were doing a few different things. Like one is still working there, and they do kind of reforestation work. So Haiti's kind of been decimated by deforestation, and because it's basically, it's a small island shared with Dominican Republic, but the side that Haiti's on is mostly mountains. And when it got all deforested, now every time there's a big rainfall, just the topsoil just flows into the sea. And so there's an organization, Mennonite Central Committee, that does a lot of reforestation work there. So I was working with them a little bit, and then I was working with an organization called World Renew, or now called World Renew anyway. And they were working with HIV/AIDS victims. So Haiti has, outside of Sub-Saharan Africa, Haiti has the highest, or had the highest HIV/AIDS rates in the world. So I was doing that work, but I was doing it as a 21-year-old kid who didn't really, like in hindsight, I'm not sure how much I had to contribute. But I just recognized that wasn't necessarily my thing. So when I came back to Canada, I recognized that I wanted to do something still working with folks experiencing oppression or poverty, but in a North American context. And so ended up, I spent about a year building houses with my friend's dad's company and, making money and living in Edmonton. And at that point, I started dating the person that eventually became my wife, Sarah, and she was really involved in the inner city here in Edmonton. Mm-hmm. She was working for a nonprofit that works with folks experiencing homelessness, and so I saw that world a little bit more up close and thought, like, oh, that's kind of a community that I would like to get involved with too. So thought, how can I do that? What could I offer given my experience and education and that kind of thing? And so ended up deciding to go back to school. So I went to Regent College, which is kind of a seminary theological grad school in Vancouver. And so moved to Vancouver and studied theology there, but the entire time hoping that it would be a bridge to working with folks on the margins in a sort of like faith community capacity. Not sure what, like whether that would be working at a place like King's, which is where I ended up, or working as a chaplain or something. I wasn't sure. And the whole time I was in Vancouver, I was involved at a place called Jacob's Well, which is a really small, it's a nonprofit, sort of functions as an intentional community in some ways. And their whole MO, the reason they exist, is to be a presence in this very poor community, the downtown east side, and to be a place of encounter between sort of more privileged communities and communities experiencing poverty. So and really communities experiencing homelessness and addiction. Those are the two big pressing needs in that neighborhood. So I was really involved there. Sarah and I cooked and ate a meal at a community kitchen there every Tuesday. They had a little they called it an urban farm, urban garden. They sort of took over an abandoned lot and turned it into a sort of mini farm in that neighborhood, and I was involved there. And it was just a really transformative experience for me, being able to build community with people whose lives are just drastically different than my own, and recognized not just maybe like the ways that I could be involved there, but just how important it was for me to be part of a community that included folks whose lives were so different than mine. And so that shaped me quite a bit. So by the time I was done Regent and finished my grad program there in Vancouver, I kind of knew that was sort of the world and the sort of thing that I wanted to get involved in. We were living in Vancouver, where it is hard to afford to live.
Yeah.
So when I graduated, and my wife Sarah had also sort of finished her schooling and program there, we thought, where are we going to be? We looked at options in Vancouver, lived there for a little while, realized we would probably be baristas or something, which is, I'd be open to being a barista for a while too, but wasn't necessarily what we wanted to do. And then Sarah got a job opportunity at the nonprofit she was working at before. They kind of invited her to come back to Edmonton and take a role there, a role that she was pretty excited about. So we moved back for her to take that job. I worked at a friend's farm for a year and did a few things, sort of finished up some schooling by distance. And then I ended up hearing about an opportunity at that same nonprofit that Sarah was working at, working with men and women leaving the federal prison system and reintegrating into Edmonton. So that's what I started doing. Did that initially part-time and then full-time for just under 10 years. And that shaped me in some pretty significant ways. The way I understand faith, the way I read the Christian scriptures, my understanding of not just my own sort of vocation in the world, but also what I think faith communities should be up to was really sort of shaped by that time. So that was really good, and it was all kind of happenstance, I think, because Sarah had this role at that organization. I heard about this opportunity and met with the guy who was doing it at the time, and so started doing that work for about 8 or 9 years, and then that kind of opened the door to this opportunity now at King's.
Okay. Before you get into what you're doing and kind of where you want to go with your job at King's, just want to say that we could do like 3 or 4 episodes just based on those little pieces that you've already mentioned. And it's interesting for me. Like, I've known Jonathan since high school, since I was in I think we were a couple of years apart, but that's when we would have met. And when you were going through all those transitions and experiences around the world, I knew you. Yeah. But we were crossing paths like between those things, like at Folk Fest or I would visit your house in Edmonton. So it's interesting for me to hear that story because I knew you through all of that, but I didn't really know what you were doing. Right. Because I was also like 19.
Yeah. And that's just like how life is, right? You
interested in exactly what you were doing in Haiti.
Yeah.
But so that was cool.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I never set out to like be a chaplain with guys leaving prison. That was very much in a matter of sort of a door opening and being willing to walk through it. And like, frankly, not really having any other doors to walk through either. Right. So that often is sort of how it happens. But, that was just really an important time and just learned so much from these guys who are leaving prison and who, like in terms of demographics to sort of, folks on the margins, most of the guys that I got to know there and befriended, they very little education, right? Most of them sort of top out at grade 7 or 8, grade 9. Many of them come from marginalized communities and a lot of folks from indigenous communities, but also communities of color. So learned a lot from them. Their lives were very different from my own. But also just the experience of incarceration meant that when they were leaving prison, so I would work with guys when they were toward the end of their sentence and being either like hitting parole.
They knew they were coming out.
They knew they were coming out. Yeah. So at the time, I actually don't know. This program still exists, but it has a little bit less support from the federal government than it did at the time. But at the time, the federal government like knew that they had they kind of had a stake and an interest in people succeeding when they leave prison, right? So, so they, on top of parole officers and sometimes social workers, they would invest in other programs. So we would get funding from the federal government to sort of be a faith presence with guys who were leaving prison. So that looked, different depending on the people that we were working with. But sometimes it was connecting them to faith communities. Sometimes it was trying to connect them to their families again that they've been separated from for a while, or supports in the community. But we were, a woman I worked with, Debbie Fawcett, she often talked about our work as like that spray foam when you're installing windows, and even if you do as best as you can, putting that window in, there's always going to be a few cracks, and so you fill that up with spray foam, and it sort of like takes the shape that it needs to be to fill those cracks. And that's kind of what we were. Like we would all the places and things that were missed by the sort of system as it was, we would try to fill in those cracks. And so it meant that my work was really diverse. Like one day
no day is the same.
Yeah, it was great. I would be.
Is that at the request of the people who are incarcerated, or is it like offered to anybody who knows they're going to be released?
It was. Yeah, the work was sort of directed by the guys who were leaving prison, and we would only work with guys that wanted to work with us, or men and women. So nobody ever had to work with us, which, my experience was very different than a parole officer who, like, everyone has to work with their parole officer. Yeah. Some people are happy to do that. Others, it's the last person they want to talk to.
But they're choosing you.
But our folks were choosing us. And so they knew they needed support, or they wanted to talk to a pastor, or they wanted nothing to do with the sort of faith side of it. But they knew that, here's this, we've heard about this guy who can connect you to a work opportunity or a social setting. Or, we ran a group every other Saturday night. That group still exists. My successor, Paul, runs it still, and it's just sort of like it's a men's group. It's a social hangout every other Saturday, because we saw that one of the things that guys needed was just like something to do on Saturday night that was sort of pro-social, as the parole officers would say. So that's what we tried to do. So we would I watched like every Marvel movie as it came out with the guys. We'd go to the theater, or we'd like just hang out and have a potluck meal or that kind of thing. And so just trying to sort of be what the people needed.
I imagine that's a very much learn on the job kind of job. Like, you're not really getting prepared for it before you jump in. But do you remember what that learning curve was like? Like, do you remember what that felt like in the initial days starting out that job? Like,
it was pretty intimidating. Yeah. Like, there's a video component to this. Like, I am not a big guy, and a lot of those guys are big guys. There's not a lot to do in prison, so a lot of them spend their time working out. Yeah. So some of those stereotypes about folks leaving prison sort of, fit the bill. And that's one of them, is there's a lot of guys. So I would, there's like the physical intimidation. But also just like not knowing that culture, and, and it is a culture in and of itself. There's a language, there's a way of talking, there's values, right? Like, all that stuff sort of gets cultivated in prison, depending on how long people are there. Some folks are not there that long, but others are. And so they're kind of leaving one culture and going to another. And so part of my role was sort of having a sense of the culture they were coming from. So there's a steep learning curve that way for sure. And then just, I remember once having coffee with a guy, and the Edmonton Police Service had redesigned their cars. Like, they'd given them new paint jobs and whatever. And I think they wanted them to look kind of like a little bit more old school. So, and I kind of liked that redesign. I remember just like offhand, this like cop car drives by, and I'm like, oh, hey, that's kind of cool what they're doing. And this guy just goes off this like expletive laden thing about the cops. Like, oh yeah, like he and I have just totally different histories and experiences with policing.
You're thinking graphic design. Like,
totally. I was like, I just like how that car looked, but he's like, don't, okay, so don't go down that road again. So, so little things like that, like lots of these little interactions. Yeah, for sure.
Was that a job you could have continued in?
Yeah, like I certainly wasn't actively looking for something else. I knew, I was happy to do that. And really, I loved my coworkers. My former coworker Debbie Fawcett is still doing that work, and she's just amazing. And so I loved working with Debbie, and would have been happy to keep doing that. This opportunity at the Micah Centre kind of just came about, but yeah, because it was so different, and day to day looked different, and it was like Edmonton is unique in terms of the world of prisons and incarceration. There's I think maybe with the exception of Kingston, Ontario, there's more folks kind of reintegrating to this area than any other city in Canada, because we have all these prisons close by.
Right.
Grand Cache, I don't know if that one still is housing folks, but when I was working, Grand Cache had a prison, a federal prison. Edmonton has a maximum security prison. There's a minimum security prison in the heart of Edmonton called Grierson Institution, and then Bowden Prison, and then the women's prison. So, so any woman doing federal prison time in Western Canada or in the prairies is doing it in Edmonton.
Okay.
So it's the one federal prison for women in the prairie region. So they're all, which means when they're getting released, they're often getting released here. And when I started, the labor market was such in Edmonton that there was just rumors that you could just walk down the street and get a job because of where oil field was at the time and all that. So that was another reason why even people who are maybe doing their time in Drumheller or Winnipeg or something would get asked to get released here. So there was a real need. So it was, in some ways, it also felt like filling and addressing a need that really needed to be.
Right.
But yeah, I also just I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the relationships that I built with those guys. Some of them still, one of them eventually became a trucker, and he works for a company that's just down 50th, and he'll often just park his truck on the side of the road and come in and say hi, which I love.
That's cool. Yeah.
He looks nothing like any of the university students here. So I just love that and he's a confident guy, and he's sort of, he totally turned his life around, and sort of, he's so proud of himself that he just kind of walks through and
cool.
Sits
in my office and catches up. So yeah.
And the prisons themselves, the managers, they all welcomed you. There was good relationships there overall.
I mostly worked so I would work with guys who were close to release. So which meant I didn't go to the Edmonton Max all that much, because ideally, if the system's working the way it should, people aren't released from there. That's not always what happens. But you're supposed to kind of cascade down from maximum, medium to minimum.
Yeah.
That's not always what happens, but ideally. So I wouldn't go there as often. I had really good relationships with the folks at this minimum security prison called Grierson Institution. And at Bowden, I would drive down to Bowden once a month and meet with guys. I had a sign-up sheet. The reintegration chaplain from Edmonton's coming if you want to talk to him, if you're getting released to Edmonton. So yeah, I had really good relationships with the chaplains and social workers and parole officers on the inside. The Max was sort of a different kettle of fish. It's I usually say and actually at the remand center. So the remand is where you go before you're sentenced, and if you don't go out on bail or whatever, you go to the remand center in Edmonton. And so I had really good connections with the folks there too, because if some of the guys I was working with on parole would reoffend or would break their conditions or something, I would visit them there. But the Max was the one prison that was the kind of stereotypical TV prison, dark, heavy doors, lots of metal doors slamming, echoing halls.
Feels like a Cold War bunker.
So it would. That was the one place where, and then also the sort of culture of folks who worked there, I think because they're in that space all the time, was different too. So that was the one place I never felt quite as warm and welcome there. But
I have a cousin who works as a guard at the Max.
Oh, really?
And he's been there for years, and he's on an extraction team there. So he's a specialized role,
to go into a room and
into a cell if there's a crisis.
Yeah.
And
I think it's a hard place to work.
And so I'm thinking we're talking about different experiences with the system.
Yeah.
It'd be interesting to have a conversation with him and you about
totally
this topic.
But. Yeah, I often, I had really good relationships with the guards. One of the reasons I now am such a big Oilers fan is because when I moved back from Vancouver and started working in the prison, I was like, what do I talk to with the correctional officers. Like, what common ground do we have? Especially the guys who worked at this minimum security prison, they had also kind of like done their time, and this was like it was like the cushiest correctional officer job in the system. And so usually there were guys who were close to retirement who've been doing it just forever, which means they're kind of like these grizzled veterans who were just kind of they've seen some stuff. They're ready to retire. So I would come in and we would talk about the Oilers game, and I would make sure I was sort of up on what's going on. That was in like the decade of darkness, and So, but yeah, those guys, we just, when we would talk about the inmates, like they just had totally different understanding and sort of like sense of their job. And I think because partly of the stuff that they'd seen, right? Like so I never wanted to minimize that. Like I wanted to try to encourage always seeing people, like not defining them by the worst decision they ever made, or not defining them by their darkest chapter, and trying to be a bit more generous and gracious in how we saw those guys, but always knowing that the reason for some of the people in the system, the reason they saw the world the way they did was because of some of the stuff that they saw every day. So never wanting to minimize that.
And your experience with the inmates was on their way out, and
and guys who wanted to work with me,
they
right?
were choosing to work with you, right?
So, I did work with a few times with people who were like strongly encouraged by their parole officer to work with me, and even that was just a small taste of like, oh, this person not quite as highly motivated, you know. It's like whatever, it's like being a high school teacher, I'm sure, and like there's some kids who are keen and ready, and other kids who it's the last place they want to be is grade 11 math or whatever. So.
Well, you mentioned the education level of a lot of those guys maxing out middle school, grade 9.
Yeah,
like you see those kids, like you see them, and you feel for them, right? Like you know what they're going through,
or even wonder what's going to happen.
And you wonder, and then they're not there the next year, and you don't know where they went to.
Yeah, often have like, I mean, all the stuff you'd maybe expect, but like challenging family lives, challenging community systems and support or lack of support. So, you know, all that stuff sort of compounds. And what was interesting was always my default in engaging with the guys was often wanting to sort of acknowledge the bigger systems that shape their lives. And so it's not just about like, it's not just that you made a bad decision. It's that like, you know, all this other stuff was happening. They were more inclined to be like, yeah, but it's on me. Like I made a bad decision. I got to make up for it. And so trying to walk that line of saying like, yeah, you do have responsibility and agency as a person. And yet like, it's okay to also admit that life kind of gave you a tougher hand than other people.
You started behind.
Yeah.
Well, that's that one chapter.
Yeah.
Do you want to break for a second, guys, and recoup and maybe talk about your current role?
Sure.
The Micah Centre?
Sure.
Yeah. What do you think, Ty?
Yeah, that's a plan.
Yeah.
All right.
This segment is brought to you by the King's University in Edmonton, Alberta. Check out King's brand new Bachelor of Kinesiology degree. This integrative, highly practical health sciences program is about preparing you for careers in human performance, sports, and biomechanics. If you have a passion for movement and exercise, visit kingsu.ca/kinesiology.
So, John, can you tell us what you do here at King's now?
Yep. So I'm the program director of the Micah Centre. So the Micah Centre is King's, I often call it an awareness and action center around issues of poverty and social justice. So part of our role is making students aware of what's going on in their world and how they, you know, we're a Christian liberal arts university. So we want students to be aware of what's happening in the world, but also teaching them about how their own faith tradition, the Christian tradition, sort of speaks into issues of poverty and justice. So what does the Christian story have to say about folks who are experiencing poverty or who need a second chance or who are experiencing oppression? And what's our responsibility to those communities? So some of it is like teaching and creating learning experiences. And then that's the sort of awareness piece. And then the action piece is creating opportunities for students to live into some of those things that they're learning. So internship opportunities, community involvement, and even in our teaching, so the courses that I teach as part of the Micah Centre are all, we try to have a big experiential focus. So getting them out of the classroom, out of a traditional learning environment, and getting them out into the community or into the world. So the course we're most known for is the Honduras Water Project, which actually pre-existed the Micah Centre. The water project was happening when we were students here. I think this year is our 31st year. So we partner with a nonprofit in Honduras, and we and with their local partners in Honduras to contribute to a water project, a clean water project in southern Honduras, in a community that doesn't have access to clean water. But we build a course around it, so students are also, when they participate, they're also learning about, how do we understand poverty? How does our understanding of poverty shape our response to poverty? What's the church's role in all this? What are best practices for international development? All that kind of stuff. So that's an example of, like, we want students out of the classroom and into the field, as they say, but also thinking critically about what they're doing and why we're doing it. So,
can you talk a little bit about when you're talking about the awareness piece and connecting faith tradition to kind of the need or current poverty? Like, can you talk a little more about that?
Yeah.
Like, what is that connection?
Yeah. I mean, so we're called the Micah Centre, and so we get both our name and our mandate from the prophet Micah, who summarized biblical faith as, or sort of, maybe not biblical faith, but summarize the call of God's people to do justice, love mercy or love kindness, and to walk humbly with God. And so sometimes when we summarize our work, we say we're trying to have our students and the wider community put that call to do justice and to love mercy, to put that call into 2026. What does that mean now in 2026? What does it mean to pursue justice, a more just world? What does it mean to love our neighbors kindly and carefully? And how do we do that? And what are we responding to? So at the Micah Centre, one of the courses we teach is a theology of justice and poverty course called Micah's Challenge. And in that course, students are first looking at the biblical story and asking, I'm trying to create space for them to ask how their faith can and should inform the work of justice. Initially that's just asking them to sort of grapple with the presence of the call to justice and right relationships in the biblical story. That's depending on your faith tradition, that might be kind of a neglected theme. But when you start reading the story for yourself, you realize it's everywhere, and it's really hard. There's a Old Testament scholar that I really like named Walter Brueggemann, and Walter Brueggemann says he says it's impossible to overestimate the presence and influence of the practice of justice in the Old Testament. It's just like the key to unlocking for the people of Israel. In the biblical story, like the practice of justice is sort of the key to unlocking what faithful life looks like with your neighbor and with the world. And so, we get students to sort of grapple with that. What do the prophets say about power and wealth and the misuse of power and how that affects the poor? And then looking to the life of Jesus and asking, like, who does Jesus hang out with, and what does he... what does he talk about? Why did he come to live? We often ask the question, why did Jesus come? Why was Jesus born? And often the answer at the beginning of that course is, well, Jesus was born to die. He was born to die for my sins. He was born to offer me forgiveness through his death and resurrection. And it's like, okay, well, the Gospels spend quite a bit of time telling us what Jesus taught about, like Jesus was alive for a while. If Jesus was just born to die, then why include all that bit? And so getting students to really grapple with Jesus' teaching in the Sermon on the Mount about love of enemies, or Jesus' engagement with folks on the margins and these people who are living kind of under the thumb of the Roman Empire, sort of on the fringes of the the centers of power, and many of them at the time experiencing poverty, and yet that's where Jesus spends most of his life and ministry and teaching. So, so we ask those questions, and then we start asking, well, what does it look like now? And so a lot of that for their learning is engaging with some of the bright lights of Christian history who have sort of shown us the way. So I just finished a course where we read Martin Luther King's Letter from a Birmingham Jail, this great summary of why he felt like as a Christian pastor it was his duty to encourage his people to disobey the government and to break the law and to participate in civic action that way. Or they read or learn about Dorothy Day or Oscar Romero, the El Salvadorian archbishop who was sort of the voice of the poor when they were being oppressed in El Salvador in the 80s. So and that, some students have heard about that stuff and know about it, and they're here to learn more. Other students, it's a new thing. Like I teach a course kind of like theologies of mission kind of, and some of them, they sign up for that course thinking mission means short-term evangelistic mission trips, and that's not how I teach that course, and that's not what I think mission is. So getting them to grapple with what does mission look like if justice is important? What does it look like in a post-colonial sort of decolonized context? All that stuff. What does it look like when actually the people were those mission trips, as they're traditionally understood? They're usually sending kids or people to places that are more Christian than we are, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like we go to Honduras in every May for the water project. Well, more Hondurans identify as Christian than we do, right? So what does that mean? And how do our conversations about all that have to change? So some of it's the global thing, like Honduras, and we're taking students in a couple weeks to Costa Rica to visit with an organization there, Arasha, Costa Rica, and a theologian named Ruth Padilla Deborst. So, trying to get a sense of what the global work of justice of the church looks like right now from that community. But some of it's local, so we have lots of partnerships with local organizations and movements that are doing cool work in that realm. So especially around truth and reconciliation with Indigenous communities. That's a big theme that we take pretty seriously at the Micah Centre. So that's part of it, and then housing and homelessness and that kind of stuff. So,
can you give a specific example of like what one of those projects would be, like a more local one?
A local one, yeah. So one thing that we do started about 5 years ago. The Micah Centre. We were approached by a local King supporter who had been learning about the Kamloops residential school site and the recovery of children's bodies there, and he was really, he was shook up by it. And he was somebody who was not particularly passionate about truth and reconciliation or justice for Indigenous communities, but he heard this story and was just like, this is not right. What can I do? And he was a successful business person, and so he felt like, well, one thing I can do is to support projects in the city. So he reached out to us, and we then reached out to our Indigenous partners. We really feel in all of our work, whether internationally or here, we should take our cue from the people we're supporting and not try to sort of dictate what needs to happen. So we approached our Indigenous partners, some friends of ours, and said like, hey, there's this person who wants to do something. What should we do? And so as a result of those conversations, we ended up starting something called the Reparations Fund, the Pakitanaswin Reparations Fund. So Pakitanaswin is a Cree word that is about sort of mutual giving and receiving. And the Pakitanaswin Fund is a fund where we receive gifts initially from this individual, and now there's other folks that donate to it. And that fund sort of grows under our umbrella and gains interest and grows through more donations. And then once or twice a year, in partnership with our local Indigenous partners, we refer to it as our Indigenous Advisory Circle. Those folks, so in conversations with them, we are able to give out grants of $5,000 to $10,000 a couple times a year to these local Indigenous initiatives and grassroots programs that have a really hard time. They're not big enough to get like federal grant money or that kind of thing. It can be really difficult to access those sorts of grants if you're just a small organization. So we are able to give these small grants that supports this work, and our students get to be involved by also sort of getting involved with these initiatives. So there's an Indigenous elder-led healing circle that happens on Monday nights that we were able to support. Sort of culture-based healing for folks experiencing addiction, these sort of healing circles. And now we have a couple students who volunteer there and participate as sort of, as equals with everyone in the circle. And we've had folks do something similar with some of the other, there's like a really neat culture-based support program for young mothers that a local Cree woman started, and we were able to support that through the Reparations Fund. And we've had students participate in some of her events too, so kind of a cool opportunity to sort of connect those dots. But and that was what I love about the Reparations Fund is that was an example of the wider community getting involved, right? It wasn't just us at the Micah Centre. It wasn't just our students. It was this local person who said, like, hey, I need to do something. But it was also this example of a local, a successful business person who knew that he wanted to do something, who was compelled by his faith to do something about, a system or like an instance of injustice. But also have the humility to say, like, I don't actually know what to do. So I'm going to go ask some people. Yeah. And, we also were like, well, it's not ours to say what we should do either. So we asked some folks. And as a result of all these relationships, something kind of cool happened. And this donor was just willing to say, like, I just want to see good things happen. Like, I don't have to tell anybody what to do or how to do it. I just want to support some good stuff happening. So that was kind of a neat thing we got to be a part of. Yeah.
I was wondering, like, you talked about listening to prophetic voices and talking to students about historically what that looks like. Are there voices that you think are happening like you mentioned, post-colonial world? I wonder if we're re-entering a period of colonialism.
Yeah, totally.
But is there a specific names or thinkers or that you're currently listening to, researching, or connecting kids to?
Yeah, there are some really, I could talk for a long time about some of the great folks that are, we're trying to connect our students to. So for me, part of it is wanting to expand students' sense of who the we of the church or the faith community is, because so often it's sort of limited to basically North Atlantic, like European English speaking, American, Canadian voices. And so for me, part of it is exposing them to these pretty inspiring prophetic practitioners of the Christian faith from around the world. So people like Ruth Padilla de Borst, who's this Argentinian theologian, really, really worth engaging with. Munther Isaac, who's a Palestinian Christian pastor and theologian who's been really vocal since the events in Gaza. He was involved and was sort of public in his work before that, but his profile was really raised since the most recent conflict in Gaza. And so he's another one that I've sort of encouraged my students to connect with. Samuel Escobar is a really interesting Latin American theologian. And then, like, locally or sort of around here, there's it's been I learn a lot from my students. Like, they are the ones who are engaging with folks on the ground, whether it's in Edmonton or local or sort of Canada or North America. So I'm always curious to hear who they're reading and who they're seeing. And it's like an interesting time engaging with students around some of this stuff. Some of them are really engaged and are really connected to what's happening, and others, I think maybe as a result of, like, the way that algorithms and social media work, they're actually like less sometimes aware of sort of what's happening than I maybe would assume. And so some of it is like trying to encourage sort of an openness to what's happening in their world and their potential involvement in it. But
one thing I've noticed or struggled with lately, I guess, is this finding prophetic voices outside of the Christian faith,
right,
but are speaking into justice in a way that I think a Christian's justice should be.
Yeah.
So being at King's, a Christian university, do you bring in important voices from outside of like the Christian faith to still teach the justice courses?
Yeah, always. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I was just putting together readings for this experience in Costa Rica that the students are going to engage with, and the key or one of the really important people that they're going to be reading is this guy named Eduardo Galeano, who wrote a book called The Open Veins of Latin America, kind of about how basically how foreign resource extraction in Latin America has really fed and perpetuated the injustices there. He's not a person of faith. He's actually really resistant, I think partly because of his reading of Latin American history. He knows the way that the church was complicit in or even perpetuated some of the oppression there. And so so I often encourage students to read them, and I know that happens in lots of other classes too. Like some of the courses I teach are theology courses, and so that's why probably me more than other folks at King's, I'm sort of directing students to voices from the faith community just because we're doing theology classes. Right. But I teach a couple social science classes, and I know that lots of other faculty are always engaging, probably because you want to engage the folks that you think are leaders in their field or just sort of like cutting edge thinkers, and whether they are coming from traditions of faith or not, in some ways doesn't matter as so much. We want students to engage from a perspective of faith with a whole variety of voices and opinions, in part because that's the world that they're going into, right? Like we want to prepare them for the world that they're actually living in. But also, I mean, for me, because I think the Holy Spirit blows far outside of the bounds of the church. And so I think that there are voices, prophetic voices, outside of the walls of the church that are pointing the way in a lot of these things. So that often happens. And even in my theology classes, we'll engage with those folks. Cool.
I don't know how we're doing for time.
We
Master.
could probably wrap up fairly soon. It's been a very quick, moving conversation.
Yeah,
it's great.
Okay, I want to keep talking forever, but we're on a bit of a schedule.
We have a schedule.
So, you got Jeff coming up, right?
But maybe as a kind of a final topic would be the idea of what it means to be harmonious. I mean, it's the title of our podcast. What do you think that means in 2026? What does it mean to live harmoniously?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I was just talking with somebody about conflict and peacemaking at this moment. I'm not sure I have a great answer. I think
you can make Chris go first.
Yeah, I'd be curious what you guys had to would say. I think there's so much I think a willingness to encounter people as people, as human beings, as whole human beings, and not just in terms of the one opinion that they share that you disagree with, I think, is important. But I sometimes feel at a loss to how really to engage that, because if peacefulness means like flourishing in right relationship with people, then I think that peace requires justice, and it requires a commitment to being honest about what's really happening in the world. And I think language of harmony sometimes is understood as like everybody kind of getting along, and if that means getting along by not talking about or addressing the really challenging things happening in the world, then I'm not really interested in that. But yeah.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I was going to mention that honesty piece, but then there's got to be action towards restoration too. So and that's what it sounds like you're encouraging young people to do, which is amazing. And in your life, the things you've done and the steps you've taken and the doors you've found that have been open to you all sound like pieces moving you towards actions of restoration.
Yeah, I mean, I was really involved. So when I worked with guys leaving prison, one of the sort of animating philosophies, which I know is also something really present in the school system, is restorative justice. Yeah. And actually, in some ways, it's educators who have been at the forefront of that conversation in classroom settings. But so yeah, and restorative justice is all about making things as right as possible. Not always making things perfect, but making things as right as possible by actually dealing with the thing that happened, and actually being honest about what happened and how it affected the relationships in the room and how it affected particularly people, the victim in a given situation, and allowing that victim to tell their story. And so that I think is really, really key. And that was a big part of what we did when we worked with folks leaving prison, is trying to be committed to that vision of restorative justice. Yeah, and so these days, depending on what side of a given conversation you might be on, if I think victims' voices are not always given space to tell the story they need to tell, and that is a real challenge to restoration and harmony. So I think that's really important. But yeah,
well, you answered that fairly well for the way it started.
Yeah.
The
I mean, like,
spotness of it.
Yeah. We were just talking with somebody the other day who, my personality, generally speaking, is to be kind of a peaceable person. Like, I've never done the Enneagram, but I'm told I'm a 9 on the Enneagram, which
Tyler,
is like,
would you concur?
From my limited knowledge, I checked out, yeah.
And we were just talking with someone who's a real, like, if something needs to be said in a room, like, she's going to be the one to say it. And because I don't tend that way, like, personality wise, and I feel like some of those, like, really high conflict situations and moments I don't find myself in as much, because I'm not often the one to stand up in a big room and say, like, are we not going to talk about this thing? Like that kind of thing. But yeah.
Well, the question that I asked is the question that we've been trying to answer for years now.
Right.
And we every once in a while we try to answer it, and we still struggle.
I think we do worse every time. I think it's getting harder.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that I'm adding to my thinking of it, like I think in terms of metaphor quite a bit. So this musical harmony, and different notes being played that you want it to sound at least presentable together. Yeah. The one part I want to add to that maybe would be like the volume of the voices, right?
Right.
That's like the piece that I'm adding, which is making it more complicated in my mind. But I think that's important, that we're not turning down specific voices.
Yeah. If you're playing a chord, but just one note is way louder than the other two, then that doesn't sound like a chord. Yeah.
Who's the loudest of us three in our chord?
You.
That's I control the levels here.
Nice. That'd be a good question for Jeff when you talk to him. He comes from the Quaker tradition, Christian tradition. He's thought a lot about that stuff.
Okay. Coming up next time.
Yeah.
But before we do that, Jonathan, do you want to stick around for a confession?
Yeah, I don't know what this is about, but let's do it.
Boy.
Talk about putting you on the spot, hey?
Yeah.
Is that a good time?
You have a minute to think about it.
I would love to hear Jonathan's confession.
Okay.
This segment is brought to you by Birdie Coffee. The team at Birdie Coffee is passionate about high-quality, locally made craft beverages. Enjoy a decadent latte, freshly roasted espresso, or something iced and delicious. Located in Red Deer, Alberta, Birdie Coffee Co. is a stop well worth making. But don't worry, if you aren't in the area, you can get their fresh roasted coffee beans delivered right to your door. Head to birdiecoffeeco.ca to learn more, or check them out at the Gasoline Alley Farmers Market, Thursday to Sunday.
You know, sometimes when you're hanging out with your friends and Jonathan at King's, you just need to...
That's a confession right there.
That came out very wrong.
Friends including Jonathan.
You like to confess things. So Jonathan, we do this every time we absolve each other, and just it means a lot, I think, to share and just get these things off our chest. And I think my life's improved from them. Chris, do you think
I
yours?
would say mine has. Oh, I was going to
I think
speak
yours
specifically about yours.
Mine has too.
Yeah.
So let's share. Let's confess some things. I'll start with a really quick one. You guys can see down below this table here, I've got the little console where I plug things into.
Mm-hmm.
I think I mentioned maybe even a year or two ago that the little plastic thin wrap that comes on new things, you take it off and it's fresh. But I don't like taking it. I like to hold off as long as I can. I just want to show you guys here. This one is still, I think 5 years later, is still just the corners dangling off.
Yes, I see that.
So the confession is that I feel like by the time this thing dies, I won't even get to experience it with its full, nice glossy feature. But I think maybe today, it's not really a confession anymore, but maybe today, after our third consecutive podcast, we should all just unwrap it together.
Oh.
That'd be satisfying.
Each get a finger on a corner. And
yeah, we should each just grab a
it
corner and peel it off. You guys okay with that?
Yeah, I would have peeled that off a long time
Me
ago
too.
with it dangling off like that.
You're lucky I haven't peeled yours off.
Well, this is, and I have a guitar at home with a pick guard. Same thing. I haven't taken off the shield yet. Is that really? Is that? Is it
No,
it's just
I
weird
understand
that
why I like that having that on there. But as soon as it starts to peel, I would definitely.
It's been peeling for quite a long time.
Yeah.
And I just.
Like, how old is this unit?
Well, I think 5 years ago now.
Okay.
4 or 5 years ago. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
That's good.
So this is one of those like
It's a near mint
bragging
condition.
confessions.
Yeah.
Speaking of people who brag, Tyler, do you have a confession?
Yeah. It's more of a story, a little, and it will lead into an apology. But when I was younger, I wanted to get my ears pierced, and I'm also very cheap, so I wanted to do it cheaply, and I didn't want the kind of the thin piercings that you get when you initially pierce your ears. I wanted to jump right up to something a little bit thicker. So I was with some friends, including Jonathan, at Calgary Folk Fest, and I bought some coconut earrings, kind of like these little coconut spikes that you would put in your ears. So I had Jonathan pierce my ears.
Like they're shaped like a coconut, or they're made
from coconut.
Okay.
But it looks about the thickness of like a toothpick. And
Coconuts were popular at that point, like they are now. But
Cool. Okay, made out of coconut. Got it.
Yeah. So it's like a little toothpick type of thing you jam in there. But so Jonathan pierced my ears with the needle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
An ice cube
and that was
and
pretty
an apple
ice
and-
cube. Yeah, we did the whole thing. And it was pretty smooth, I would say, to begin. But then I wanted these coconut
thicker
piercings
gauge,
immediately in. And I just remember Jonathan, blood kind of dripping and ice dripping down down my neck.
I remember
Jonathan
this pretty clearly.
had to put a lot of effort to get this
I remember
new.
starting to feel faint because I was like, as we
Me
kept
too.
pushing.
Minor
There's
operation.
blood all over your hands.
Yeah, and I remember really clearly too, being kind of sweaty and it was painful. But I was also aware of the effort you were putting in because you were right in my ear.
In hindsight, the prospect of infection.
Yeah.
That it was taking that long, and a coconut. I mean, it was dipped in whatever it was dipped in.
This is a
19-year-olds would do to.
Of the
But he got it in. We may have made a secondary hole for one of them. It was not easy.
No.
But we got it done.
Did you do both ears?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So my apology is, I guess, I put you through that. That was my own impatience.
I thought you were going to say you got
cheapness.
them re-pierced right after.
No.
I thought he was going to ask you to do a top one. Right.
Yeah. But thank you, and I'm sorry. That's but a nice bonding moment for us.
That
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
We were just talking about that because our kids know each other. So
Yeah.
we were saying, do you know that I pierced Rowan's dad's ear?
Your unintentional blood brothers.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's it.
I can go next. We're in a really nice recording studio here at King's, and by somebody's desk, I think there's a professor who's using this room maybe as an office.
Yep.
Above his computer station are some posters of a band called the Small Glories, who I've seen before in house concerts, and they're excellent. I think they're from the East Coast. But my confession is that I really love the small music field. Used to try to go to as many of those kind of concerts as possible, and I've fallen off, and I feel like I've only the last maybe 4 or 5 concerts have all been these massive stadium, which aren't really as enjoyable for me, but I want to be a better supporter of indie music.
Well, it's funny you mentioned that, Chris, because on March 13th,
This is all just a setup.
and March 14th,
I'm glad you took it.
13th, 14th, 2 nights at Red Heart. We're playing. It's the big celebration week. We're playing both nights. It's not even. It's just a cover charge. So reasonable, Jonathan. The charge.
Yeah.
Such a low
I'm
price point.
Low
but the
barrier.
Two nights in a row sounds like a pretty big.
I'm there for at least
band.
one.
You want like a small.
We're repeating the same set.
they're not.
Don't have to watch it,
Don't go
but
to both
I see.
unless you
Gotcha.
want to really get to know the songs.
Right.
But this was not planned, by the way. Just a very
No,
nice
it
segue.
wasn't.
Good segue.
Thank you.
I also really lament the loss of the Velvet Olive in Red.
Me too.
Red Deer
Used
as
to go
as a
there.
venue for those types of bands. Yeah.
Cool.
Anyway, Jonathan.
Yeah, well, mine, I feel like I need to confess. So every morning I wake up and think today is the day that I'm going to be more efficient and use my time better.
Mm-hmm.
And then within that first hour of my workday, I have checked the NHL fantasy app that both Graham and Tyler are also on multiple times and have...
Has your standing changed?
Despite
in
the
that
fact, I was
hour?
just gonna say, despite the fact that I've been in third for like a month and nothing's changing, and no decision that I make is gonna shift that one way or the other. So I need to confess the amount of time and mental energy, and even like personal value that I put on something that has literally no real world value or importance. Yeah.
I see where you're coming from, but I want to put a counter. I want to push back a little bit. Like I think the value in that is that you and I have texted over
Totally,
this
yeah,
too, which
yeah.
is also like during our workday we're texting
Yeah.
about a potential trade. but I don't know if I would have texted you.
Yeah, I have thought about that actually. I have thought about that. Our friend who kind of got us all to do it.
Mm-hmm.
One of his pitches at the beginning was it's going to help us stay connected. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I don't know. I'm in it for the cash prize.
Yeah.
But but it's true. And I was just telling a friend who decided not to.
Like, you're
kind
not
of
my friend anymore.
Well, I said, like next year you should think about doing it, if only for like the banter and and like staying connected with people, because I actually do think there's a lot of value in that. Yeah, that's true. But I'm not any better or worse person at the end. If I'm in third, if you're in ninth or you're in first, there's no real significance to it. But yeah,
Cool. Thanks for sharing. Means a lot to us.
And you're absolved.
Then you're absolved.
Oh, yeah, we can add that.
That is good.
Well, if you want us to personally absolve you, who should you email?
There's an AI priest now that'll take your confessions. But also you could email us at harmoniousgentleman@gmail.com.
Yeah.
But you should also check out our Substack, right, Tyler?
Yeah, harmoniousgentleman.substack.com. We're also on Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that.
Oh, quickly about the Substack. I had a friend say, "Hey, can you please send me the retracted study that we talked about, Andrew Wakefield, last week?" And I said, "Go to the Substack."
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're like, I didn't
What are
know
you
it
doing?
existed.
It's
I'm like,
already
we mentioned
there.
it. It's there.
Yeah.
So
It's all there.
all our stuff is there.
Maybe Jonathan will have some names or articles that we can post.
That'd be cool.
yeah, happy to send some.
Your year plan for your courses.
Yeah, I should send you the readings
Supposed
actually. Well, I just sent somebody a YouTube video of Ruth P. Divorced
Okay.
at a public presentation that's totally worth listening to.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice.
Okay.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
This
Thanks,
was
guys.
Awesome.
And we'll
Great.
see you guys in about half an hour on.
On the Harmonious Gentleman.
Podcast.
Harmonious gentlemen.